You've probably never thought about what happens to your own teeth after you die, but someone else usually had very specific plans for them. You'd assume ancient people simply buried their dead with teeth intact and moved on. Actually, teeth were often the most valuable part of a corpse. In many ancient economies, a dead body's teeth were worth more than its gold, because teeth could be reused in ways gold never could. Now here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't rare. It happened across continents and centuries, in civilizations that never even knew each other. Kate has traced this strange history across 7 cultures, and she's ready to show you exactly what ancient people did with a dead body's teeth. Your first stop is ancient Egypt, where teeth weren't fixed for comfort. They were fixed so a body looked whole in front of the gods. Egyptian embalmers sometimes used thin gold wire to bind a loose tooth back into place, keeping the smile intact for a journey into the afterlife. But that's not the wild part. Some mummies show a stranger's tooth wired in beside their own, borrowed to complete a mouth the gods judged. Historians still debate whether that donor tooth came from a living servant, a slave, or simply another corpse prepared in the very same workshop. You'd want your body whole for that final judgment, and if a tooth was missing, someone else's tooth might quietly take its place before burial. This wasn't dentistry meant to heal the living, it was cosmetic work meant to satisfy the dead. And the difference mattered enormously to ancient Egyptians. Your next stop is ancient Rome, where a law called the 12 Tables banned burying gold with the dead, with exactly one narrow exception. Gold used to fasten a corpse's teeth together was specifically allowed to stay in the grave, a strange loophole carved directly into Roman law. Here's the detail nobody expects. Roman lawmakers considered dental gold too practical to count as wealth, even while banning every other form of buried treasure. Imagine this, standing over a grave watching gold jewelry get stripped away piece by piece, except for the tiny wire holding a dead man's teeth. You'd realize teeth occupied a strange legal category all their own, treated less like ornament and more like a body part worth protecting. Rome didn't invent this respect for dental work. They inherited it from a much older neighboring civilization that came centuries before them. Your next stop is the Etruscan civilization, centuries before Rome existed, where dentists were already building gold bridgework good enough to survive to today. Etruscan craftsmen riveted replacement teeth into thin gold bands, worn by patients to fill gaps left by teeth that had been knocked out or lost. Most people assume the opposite of the truth here. Those replacement teeth weren't fake, they were often real human teeth pulled from someone else. Some of those donor teeth likely came from the recently dead, or from people too poor to refuse selling a tooth for someone wealthier's smile. You'd have worn that gold band proudly, never quite asking whose mouth the tooth wired into yours had originally come from. This wasn't a rare curiosity either. Archaeologists have found enough Etruscan gold dental bridges to prove it was an established, working trade. Your next stop is the ancient Maya world, where teeth were deliberately drilled and inlaid with jade, turquoise, or pyrite as a mark of status. This wasn't done to the dead. It was done to living elites and warriors, whose bejeweled smiles announced rank the moment they opened their mouths. This is where the story splits. Archaeologists have found these inlaid teeth still in place inside burials, meaning status followed a person into the grave. Now consider what this really meant. A jeweled tooth wasn't just decoration, it was identity, carried all the way from the living world into death. You'd have flashed that smile in life knowing it marked you as important, and in death, it marked exactly the same thing to your family. Not every ancient culture let jewelry like that rest quietly in the ground, and the next stop shows teeth could travel further than the grave. Your next stop moves away from prosthetics entirely, toward warrior cultures across the Pacific who kept the teeth of defeated enemies as trophies. Turns out, the truth is even stranger than decoration. In some Pacific societies, an enemy's tooth was believed to carry their strength into its owner. Strung onto necklaces and worn openly, these teeth marked a warrior's victories the same way medals or scars might mark a soldier today. You'd have understood immediately what a stranger's necklace meant, reading a person's battle history in the teeth hanging visibly around their neck. This wasn't about disrespecting the dead here. It followed its own internal logic about honor, power, and what a defeated warrior's body still carried. Teeth traveled this way across the ancient Pacific for generations, long before anyone in Europe thought to build an entire industry around them. Your next stop is 18th century Georgian England, where wealthy patients paid poor donors directly for their still living, healthy teeth. Here's what actually happened next. A dentist would pull a poor person's healthy tooth and transplant it into a wealthy patient's jaw within minutes. The poorest sellers were often young and desperate, trading a permanent gap in their own smile for money they badly needed to survive. You'd have sat in that dentist's chair as either patient or donor, and your position depended entirely on how much money you had. This live transplant trend was risky, painful, and prone to spreading infection. Yet demand for young, healthy teeth kept climbing across wealthy London society. Then one single battle changed the entire supply chain overnight, and dentists suddenly had access to more young, healthy teeth than they had ever seen. Your next stop is the battlefield at Waterloo in 1815, where roughly 50,000 soldiers died in a single brutal day of fighting. Scavengers moved across that battlefield within hours, pulling teeth directly from the mouths of dead soldiers before their bodies were even buried. Somewhere along the way, someone figured this out. Dead soldiers were mostly young men, meaning an enormous, unusually healthy supply of teeth all at once. Those teeth were shipped back to London by the sackful and turned into dentures sold under one now famous marketing name, Waterloo teeth. You'd have smiled with a dead soldier's tooth in your mouth and never known it, since dentists rarely mentioned where the teeth had come from. Waterloo teeth were marketed as superior to teeth pulled from elderly or diseased donors, and wealthy customers across Europe paid handsomely for that reassurance. This single battle supplied the denture trade for years, but eventually even 50,000 corpses couldn't keep up with growing demand across the continent. You'd assume that once the supply ran out, the trade quietly ended, and the name Waterloo teeth simply faded into history books. Here's the twist most people never hear. The name Waterloo teeth kept selling for decades, even though the original battlefield supply was long gone. Scavengers eventually turned to a new battlefield entirely, on the other side of the Atlantic, during the American Civil War in the 1860s. Here's the part historians still argue about. Teeth pulled from Civil War dead were shipped to Britain and sold under that same old brand name. Buyers in London believed they were purchasing genuine Waterloo teeth, decades old and dignified, while actually wearing teeth pulled from Gettysburg or Antietam. And once you know this, everything else makes more sense. Waterloo teeth wasn't really one battle's story. It became a brand built on multiple wars. You'd have trusted that label completely, with no way to know your smile carried a soldier's tooth from a war fought thousands of miles away. This trade only faded once porcelain and vulcanized rubber dentures became cheaper and easier to produce than hunting battlefields for human teeth. You realize this entire history wasn't really about vanity. It was about desperation, both from the people needing new teeth and the people supplying them. But there's a catch worth sitting with. Every one of these practices depended on somebody's death, poverty, or defeat to make someone else's smile whole. Kate points out that modern dentistry only replaced this uncomfortable history recently, once titanium implants and synthetic materials finally made human donor teeth unnecessary. You reach the end thinking differently about your own smile, and Kate reminds you a good set of teeth rarely stayed with just one person.